Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast.
My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Galaga, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I have a shorter list of bona fides, but I write about movies, and I yap about them, too. And I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
But your list is no less prestigious or impressive.
Thank you.
Glad you added that in. Okay, so as always, we're here to talk about some movies, but before we get to this week's movies, I will mention that over on our Patreon exclusive audio this week, we are talking about the 1979 film The Frisco Kid in honor of Jewish American Heritage Month. And I think we had a fun conversation over there. Had a couple tangents here and there, but that was a good time as always. And if you're not a patron, please consider joining for $5 a month. You get access to weekly bonus episodes, so exclusive audio. And you also get to vote in monthly polls, and we're going to have one coming up in a couple of weeks here. And that's a lot of fun, so you can vote and pick movies for us to watch and talk about. And it's a good time. And while I'm at it, I want to thank our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you for your support.
Woo! Thanks, Heather.
Yeah.
Woo this week.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It's all about the woo.
Brought the woos out.
Mm-hmm. Feeling woozy right now. Hey.
I mean, we are the land
Nice.
of woos.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Massachusetts
Wait a minute.
has the woo, which is Worcester, and then there's a second
True.
Woburn.
Woburn. Yeah. Woburn is
Oh.
right down the road from me.
The land of
Yeah.
woos. You learn
Land
something
of
new every
woos.
day.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they
Which-
call Worcester the woo, but they do.
Does anybody really call it the woo, or is it a bunch of things
Yeah.
that, you know?
No,
Yeah,
I
really?
know what
Call
you're
it the woo.
thinking. I know what you're thinking. Like, oh, is it something like, oh, nobody calls Boston Beantown because they don't unless you're not from here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, from what I've heard from people who are from Worcester, yes, they call it the woo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to start calling Malibu the boo then.
I love it.
Every time I go out there, I'd be like, I'm heading out to the boo. See you guys on Monday.
Gonna see my boo at the boo.
That's right. Hope I don't get a boo-boo when I'm surfing this afternoon. Hey-oh.
Amazing.
Nice.
Thank
And
you.
of course, seamless transition to talking about which movies we're discussing this week.
Yeah.
So first, Dave is going to talk to us about the re-release of Let It Be on Disney Plus, right?
Yep.
That's where they re-released it. And then Megan is going to talk to us about Evil Does Not Exist. And then we all three are going to be talking about Force of Nature, The Dry 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I've
Rocky.
been waiting.
Yeah. We'll talk more about The Dry 2 later. But first, Dave, tell us all about the re-release of Let It Be.
Well, basically, it's Peter Jackson's Get Back, but 7 hours shorter. The end.
Oh. All right.
No, it's so this is they've gone to, I'm sure, great time and expense to clean up and re-release Michael Lindsay Hogg's 1970 documentary Let It Be, which if you've seen Get Back or if you haven't, I feel like most people are familiar with the Let It Be story, but just in case you're not, in January 1969, Paul talked the other three into writing and recording an album from scratch and then doing a live show. And then they scrapped the live TV show, and ended up doing a concert on the Apple rooftop. And that is what the documentary encompasses. I think the unfortunate thing about it is that you have to think about this from what it was like to shoot this in 1969 and edit it through 1969 and release it in 1970. It's all shot on, I don't know if it's 16 or 35. If it's 16 and it's blown up to 35, it looks great. And if it's 35, it looks great. It's really cleaned up. And all the footage, Peter Jackson said that he made a point of not reusing footage from Michael Lindsay Hogg's Let It Be and Get Back, just because he didn't want to make people feel like they were watching, the same thing. And there's an interview with Michael Lindsay Hogg conducted by Peter Jackson that opens the movie. And I think if you're looking at it in a 1969-70 lens, when the entire world knows who the Beatles are and who Billy Preston is, and that the Beatles are having problems and that their manager died a couple of years before and they're managing themselves and like their company is hemorrhaging cash, then the fact that there is no real narrative to the movie doesn't harm it. I think in this context, you need to have seen Get Back for it to make sense for you if you're, somebody who is not familiar with the Beatles story. And there are a lot of people who are not, because there are a lot of young people out there now. So it's I'm just trying to imagine what it must have been like to shoot 75 hours of film and record 150 hours of audio and then try to whittle that down in a year to 85 minutes.
That's wild.
I mean, that's crazy. And so when you think about that, and then you think about the fact that Michael Lindsay Hogg basically had 4 bosses to answer to, it's kind of a miracle that he got the movie out at all. But it doesn't seem to show the Beatles falling apart nearly as much as it's always been portrayed. That comes across much more readily in Jackson's, 8-hour Get Back documentary from whenever that was, 2 or 3 years ago. But as a time capsule, it's fine. It's cool to see the Beatles doing their thing, being Beatley, and, seeing their spirits perk up when George Harrison asks Billy Preston to join them. Although that doesn't happen on camera. I think it's George who asked him to join. And the reason I think that is because George produced at least one of Billy Preston's albums. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the rooftop. Oh, one thing I'll say about it is, they chose to shoot in, this film studio that was big and cavernous and kind of dull looking. And before they moved over to their own recording studio, which is just white. It's so late 60s, early 70s decor wise. It's like fucking hit the nail on the head. Which of course makes sense because it's contemporaneous. But as I was saying, the rooftop sequence, it is kind of amazing how well planned Michael Lindsay Hogg, had that all sketched out, and they had cameras on this roof and that roof and above the band and below the band and over on the side. And so this is just very well done, and the entire concert is in Peter Jackson's movie. And there's just, basically the songs that are on the album Let It Be in this version, but it's still cool. It's cool to see like people freaking out that the Beatles are performing live in the middle of the day. And that everybody knows who it is, immediately. It's like, yeah, do you know who's singing up there? She's like, well, it's Paul McCartney, isn't it? So yeah, yes, it is. Anyways, so it's worth seeing if you have, 85 minutes to spare. But I don't really think you're necessarily missing anything if you don't. If you're a completist like I am, it's worth seeing.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Anything
What's
else
your favorite
like
Beatles song? Oh, sorry.
My favorite Beatles song ever?
Is that too mind blowing? What's your favorite Beatles song from this recording? How's that?
I got to tell you, Let It Be is not my favorite. I think the album version of Let It Be is really good, even though it's got that corny Phil Spector production on it, because it's got George Harrison's fucking ripping guitar solo, which the single version doesn't. It has like this wimpy, like, barely distorted Leslie guitar solo. For those of you listening at home and you don't know this, Leslie is a rotating speaker that, lots of organists use to make their organ go. Wah. So, but guitarists use it too. From Let It Be, yeah, probably the song Let It Be or Get Back. Get Back is a great song. But my favorite Beatles song ever?
Like I said, that's too hard. It's okay.
It's a tie for like I'm So Tired, probably, and then about half of Abbey Road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I love the early stuff too, but when they became basically the kind of people who would use the studio as a symphony, or as an instrument itself, fucking cool. There you go.
Thanks.
Nice. So then let's move on to Evil Does Not Exist.
Yeah, I didn't see this, so I can't say anything about it. But I just do want to say I love this title.
It's a great title.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious to hear more. So this is written and directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi and co-written by Eiko Ishibashi. This is the same director who did was the film Drive My Car from a couple years ago that was incredibly popular.
Yes.
And this IMDb says this is a drama. I'll give the couple sentence summary, and Megan, you can tell IMDb where it got it wrong.
That is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, of course. I want to give you the opportunity to be like, wrong. Takumi and his daughter Hannah live in Mizubiki village close to Tokyo. One day, the village inhabitants become aware of a plan to build a camping site near Takumi's house, offering city residents a comfortable, quote, escape to nature.
Oh, is that it?
So, yep.
Okay.
That's what IMDb says. That's I mean, I've never seen the movie, and I can tell you that is probably woefully either inaccurate or just too little to work.
Yeah, it's like it just needed like one more sentence. That's why I was like, we're going along, and I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty accurate. And then it like stopped short. It's like so close. Just needed like one more sentence. Yeah,
a screeching halt.
I know. That's why I was like, wait, is that it? I didn't know if you were taking a breath or like.
Nope, that's all. That's all.
All right, that's all she wrote. So yeah, that is very true. You're kind of just dropped into the story. Well, first of all, the film opens in a really kind of lovely way, where it's a tracking shot and the camera's pointed up overhead, and you're going past trees overhead, and it's just so relaxing and so lovely, and you hear this beautiful music. The score is just incredible. That was very evocative to me of a Max Richter score, and I love Max Richter's music because it's just stunning. So I'm like, oh, this is just so lovely, and it's so bucolic and idyllic, and isn't this nice? And then it like abruptly stops, and then you see a little girl in the woods, and that's Hannah, and she's looking at the trees, and again, so lovely and nice. And then you get a long take of her father chopping wood, and isn't this nice? Isn't this lovely? And but the film has some very jarring juxtapositions. Like amongst these lovely long takes and this lovely score, you have like you'll hear random gunshots. Just gunshots, and you'll see these large feathers, like a large feather on the ground, and which seems pretty innocuous. But then you also will see blood dripping from some leaves, and you get very jarring edits, and you're like, what the hell? So that's kind of the vibe and the tone going on. So you're dropped kind of into this story where the townspeople, Takumi and the other townsfolk, are being courted essentially by a glamping group. So it's not just camping, it's glamping, which is basically bougie camping. And they want to set up. That's what it is.
I know it is. I know it is, but I don't think I've ever heard it described that way. It just made me laugh.
I love that it tickled you. Yeah, so they basically want to set up, some bougie camping little like tents or little huts or whatever they want to do. And they're going to have a lot of people coming in, or they're hoping to. And there's a very long scene. It's either like 17 minutes or 20 minutes scene of basically a town meeting with these two representatives. And they're not even the glamping people. They're just like the representatives for the glamping company. And they're talking about, they do like this presentation about what they want to do. And the townspeople are very concerned about the water, because another thing you see a lot of scenes of is you see Takumi taking pails of water. That's one of the jobs he has because he's kind of like a handyman and he has a lot of different jobs, and he gets water not only for himself but for a local restaurant, and it's a soba noodle restaurant. And you find out in this town meeting that the woman who owns the restaurant and is the chef, she specifically moved here from Tokyo. And one of the things she loves about it is that the water is such high quality because it's like spring water that the soba noodles taste better. And so the water is very, very precious, and everyone lives very, very much in balance with nature. So having a glamping company come in and having all these tourists come in and like an influx of people, they're very, very concerned. And so people have a range of reactions, but basically none of them are good. They're all very concerned that it's going to like mess up the water. It's going to pollute the water, because one of the things that the representatives talk about is that they want to use this septic tank that's like basically a septic tank that can only handle like 50 people or something. And it's going to be, they want like a lot more than that. Yeah. And so the people are trying to tell them like, hey, you're going to mess up the water. You're going to mess up the land. This isn't going to work for us. And there's a woman and a man, and the man is like, oh, well, this is going to bring a lot of commerce and a lot of money. Isn't that great? And they're like, well, wait a minute. If these are glampers, aren't they going to kind of like set up like grills and, kind of cook their own foods? They're not going to be going to restaurants. Right. They're not going to be going to like the stores. And the guy's like, well, I don't know. And then the woman is like, you're all bringing up you're bringing up a lot of really great points. What should we do? And like, what would make it better? And so people are trying to talk to them. And Takumi's kind of like, he's not the leader of the town because they have a chief who's like the head of the town. But Takumi kind of like has a lot of the perspectives that people agree with, as far as like, this is not a good idea. We don't want this. So basically that's a large part of the movie. And a lot of it is this decision that's coming in. And then you see the two people talking to the guy who's actually like behind the scenes of this, and he's like on a trip and they're Skyping in with him or Zooming in, and he's like, oh, it's fine, who cares, like we're just gonna give them a compromise, we'll do half of what they want and then the rest, so what, it's fine, we'll move the septic tank, but we still have to do the septic tank. And the woman's like, I actually agree with the people. I think they've got really great points. And he's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. So yeah. And then you see the two of them, the two representatives, the woman and the man, they're driving back to Takumi because their boss is like, oh, offer Takumi the role of a caretaker. Because that was one of the concerns that was brought up, is like, oh, we need somebody who's a caretaker to, make sure everything's running smoothly with the glamping people. And so they offer him this job and he's like, I don't want that job and I don't need the money. He's like, I got enough stuff to do. So then he takes them to the soba noodle restaurant and they're like, whoa, this is amazing. And then they basically run errands with him and get the water, so they see how crystal clear it is and how beautiful it is. And then the movie takes an interesting turn in that Takumi's daughter, Hannah, has been missing for hours. And so he goes out to find her in the woods because she likes to walk home from school through the woods. Even though the chief was like, oh, you should be careful because it could be dangerous out there. So she's missing. And then Takumi finds her. She has been injured by a deer, because there's a conversation earlier about when deer are gut shot, like shot in the gut, and how they don't harm people except when they're shot in the gut. And then the deer will be rabid and like attack to protect themselves and their fawn. And this is exactly what happened. And it looks like he's watching this happen in real time, but I guess it's kind of like a flashback. It's very strange. It's kind of like it felt kind of dreamlike and confusing to me, but I think that's what's happening. And so he sees his daughter injured because she tried to walk up to the injured deer to help them. And then the guy who's the representative for the glamping company, he goes to run over, and then Takumi grabs him and strangles him, and then he passes out. And then Takumi takes his daughter and leaves. And then you see the guy later, the guy who was strangled, like stumbling up, trying to get up. And he falls over again, possibly dead, not sure. And then the last thing you see is Takumi. You see the overhead shot that's bookending the opening of the film. You see the overhead of trees, but this time at night. And you hear Hannah's labored breathing. So that's where the film ends. It ends very ambiguously. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. I read a really great interview with Ryusuke at RogerEbert.com and talking about the ambiguity of the film. And he talked very much about that was his intention. He wanted to kind of have things be kind of ominous. But he wanted people, to have their own interpretations of what was going on in the film at the end. And he really loves Akira Kurosawa films and likes that there's an ambiguity in his films, and he wants an ambiguity in his films. So yeah, it's kind of unclear what happens, but I found that fascinating that you don't know exactly what's happening, that nature is depicted as something so reverential and beautiful, but also dangerous and deadly simultaneously. Something to respect, and kind of if you don't, Mother Nature will fuck with you. Like, I'm kind of here for that. I really like the film's kind of ethos of we shouldn't be messing with nature. We should just leave nature alone. We should live in harmony. But yeah, the score is beautiful. The cinematography is beautiful. It was an interesting film. The town meeting scene kind of reminded me. There's a 20-minute town meeting scene in the Romanian film that came out last year, RMN, and that's a riveting scene. And it very much felt like the town meeting in this film. If you've seen RMN, but yeah, I really liked this.
It sounds ambiguous.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. But it sounds like, I don't want to use the word wacky, but like kind of wacky.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but like I would never describe it as wacky. Like that's not quite what's happening, but like it doesn't feel wacky. Like it doesn't feel like
not wacky like
anything.
Bugs Bunny is wacky.
Right. Yeah, but it's kind of like, wait, what's happening? What is really going on here? And in that way, maybe it's wacky.
Yeah, especially when you get to that ending. I want to see it now because I'm like, I can't make heads or tails of that based on your description of it, and I'm sure that you're describing it just as it happened. So
I rewound it like 3 times and watched it, which obviously if you're seeing it in a theater, you can't do that. But I rewound it and I'm like, wait, did I miss something? Was I not fully engaged? But I was. And yeah, it's a thinker.
What's the tone of this? Because like IMDb, it says drama, but it sounds like it could be like farcical, or it could be like satire, or is it playing it completely straight the whole time while making its kind of like point?
Yeah, it's not farcical. It's not comedic. It's not satirical. It feels like a psychological drama. Like parts of it feel like a thriller almost, even though it's not at all like a thriller. But just in the kind of psychological element of it and the kind of unease, it's more that tone.
Gotcha. Okay.
But then it kind of shifts because other parts it feels so lovely. Like, so it's basically, I feel kind of like the film is consistently putting you off balance. So just when you think you're kind of in this like zone of comfort, there's a sharp edit and it changes, or there's a sound change, or there's these little moments that are trying to, it feels like, throw you off balance.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's a slowly unfolding film. So it's not describing it, it's not like a traditional like thriller, like it's not riveting in the same kind of way. But it's a film I feel like I will be pondering for a long time.
I'm pondering it now.
I know, like the way I'm saying it, I'm like, wait, is that what happened? And I'm like, yeah, that is what happened. But like, it's a strange film.
Yeah.
In the best possible way.
No, I mean, it sounds like it's like...
It seems so straightforward. Like, oh, some people want to come and, have like, they want to set up a business in this town, this, idyllic town. And that sounds so straightforward, but it's like not. It's, anyway.
Yeah, this sounds like it's right up my alley. I wish I could have seen it.
I know. I want to know what you think if you do see it, because I'm very, very curious to hear more opinions on it.
Okay. Yowza.
I feel like collectively turned into the emoji with like the fingers on the chin, like pondering.
I love it.
All right. So then let's move on then to the main event. Force of Nature, The Dry 2.
That's Force of Nature, The Dry 2.
The Dry 2.
Crocodile Dundee. Crocodile Dundee 4, Force of Nature, The Dry 2.
I can't hear Crocodile Dundee without thinking of that exchange from Tropic Thunder where someone tries to make a joke about Crocodile Dundee and Robert Downey Jr.'s character as the Australian actor was like, "You shut your mouth when you talk about that man. He's a national treasure."
Yeah.
Like, don't you try to talk shit about Crocodile Dundee.
Yikes.
So this is written and directed by Robert Connolly, based on a book by Jane Harper. And if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you might have heard our episode about The Dry, the first film in this series, many moons ago. So I think that was why we all wanted to see it. I know Dave in particular really liked The Dry. And so
I did.
okay.
I liked The Dry a lot.
Yeah.
I did too. I don't know if as much as you, Dave, but I did think it was great.
Yeah. I just remember that I'll get into this. The Dry, it had a malevolence to it that, or maybe eeriness is a better word, because there was this like thing that happened to them when they were young. And is it going to happen to them again in The Dry? So,
yeah.
Sorry about
that. All good. Yeah, okay. So, let's see. Let's do our IMDb plot summary, and then we'll flesh it out from there. But also, I should mention that this film stars Eric Bana and Anna Torv as our kind of leads. 5 women participate in a hiking retreat, but only 4 come out the other side. Federal agents Aaron Falk and Carmen Cooper, which is played by Jacqueline McKenzie, forgot to mention that, head into the mountains hoping to find their informant still alive. And that informant is Anna Torv. So, yeah, I think that roughly describes what's going on. Anna Torv works for like a big financial firm, and she's their informant. Eric Bana's character is a federal agent investigating financial crimes. And she's supposed to give them this like thumb drive with this important data, and then she disappears, and then they're like, we got to track her down. Then they join the police in searching for her in this remote area, like a rainforesty kind of setting, and there's basically, I almost want to call this the Force of Nature, The Dry 2, the flashback, because there's like layers of flashbacks in this movie. It's like in the present, you have Eric Bana like investigating the crime and then questioning everybody, and they're flashing back to what happened when they were with Anna Torv, and then he is also simultaneously flashing back to when he was in the same area as a kid hiking with his parents, and his mom went missing, and him and his dad have to basically like run around and find their way around and find the mom.
rescue her from a serial killer.
Yep.
Yep.
That's another thing. It's like there's this layer of drama around, there was a serial killer and he had some cabin out there and a dog. They used to like lure people, and then, they found some of his bodies, but maybe not others. So like, oh, there's a burial mound out there. Are there bodies in it? I don't know.
We never actually learn whether there are bodies in it, do we?
We don't.
Because it ends with, or that part of the story ends with the local police being like, look, we found what we were looking for. Now we can finally give some relief to those families after 40 years. It doesn't sound like that at all.
No.
Kind of does.
I just feel like if I were ever to visit Australia, I would just spend the entire time giggling, and people would be like, what's your problem, mate? And I'd be like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Please keep talking. So.
So yeah, is there anything else to mention before we just dive in to talk about what we think?
I think you
all
covered
of
the big moments. Yeah. Sorry, Megan.
Yeah, I was just gonna say all the women are like they all hate each other, or they all hate Anna Torv's character, and like
that's true.
Anna Torv's character seems they call her a bully. I don't know if I would, but she definitely is a hard ass who's constantly riding all of them, especially her coworker, who's got addiction issues, and she clashes with the boss because she's close friends, quote unquote, with the boss's husband. Yeah, that's the only other thing I would add.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they all seem to really hate her.
Yeah.
And it's like for different reasons. Like it's like she's mad. The one woman is mad, her husband runs the company and she's mad. She feels like, Alice, Anna Torv, is like cheating with her husband. But then also I think she feels like Alice is like super incompetent and she hates her. Like everyone I feel like kind of feels like Alice is incompetent. But I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, I don't know how reliable all of these other narrators are. So I'm like, is it that Alice is just an asshole and their hatred is justified? Or is it like they're just singling her out and just like laying into her all the time? I don't know. That's one thing that's not super clear throughout the movie.
It's also not clear. Was Alice, did she kind of semi-recruit Brianna to help her? Or did Brianna just find out on her own about the documents?
I got the sense Brianna just found out on her own because she saw her like photocopying a bunch of documents.
Right. Yeah. But then she had the flash drive, which...
Yep. She did.
Which Alice had hidden by a tree. And I felt like, okay, so Brianna found that, but it wasn't near where she was supposed to be peeing. It wasn't near where she was peeing. It was where she was supposed to be peeing. Right. So did she go over there and find it, or did she take it off Alice's body when she came across Alice's body in, near, because I think she did come across Alice's body, although we never see her with Alice's deceased body. We see her sister, but
these are all great questions.
Yep. Oh yeah, spoiler, Alice dies. She's dead. When they find her. She's been dead for quite some time. And she was killed accidentally. She gets into a fight with I forget the character's name. Lauren. Their daughters go to school together, and you find out that Alice's daughter like bullied Lauren's daughter. You don't get details really on what happened other than it was a pretty significant bullying, and all the other kids got expelled from the school except for Alice's daughter because she basically bribed the school to keep her daughter there.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why the cops were onto her, because she had like $100,000 that she wasn't supposed to have that she like gave to the school to bribe them to keep her daughter. I think that's how they came across her in the first place.
Yep.
So she fights with Lauren. Lauren knocks her, in classic movie style, throws her down and the back of her head hits a strategically placed rock that just happens to be there. And she thinks, Alice got up, so she's got to be fine. I'll just go back to bed. And then she goes back to bed, and Alice dies somewhere in there, I'm assuming, of internal bleeding.
Yeah, cerebral hemorrhage. It'll get you when you're in the dry rainforest. When you're in the dry, too, the wet. This is one of the rainiest movies I've seen in a while.
Yeah. I was definitely going to make that same joke, because as I was watching it last night, I'm like, this is the opposite of the dry. This is the wet. It's raining all the time. And the whole thing is like, they need to get this search done before the storm comes in and it's raining. And then they're saying like, it could be like a week before we could try to actually get back out there again. But they managed to beat the storm, like just barely, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it does start storming at the end when Eric Bana goes back out there with the guide who works at the resort. Because the other thing
Yep.
about this is kind of like glamping, right? Because you've got this immaculate resort, but then people will
Yes.
like wander off into the wilderness, and they'll be like, all right, find you back here Tuesday,
Yeah. Well, and then they said that they have, places specifically for people to camp, and they have lock boxes
Mhm.
with, tents and all the supplies and things. So it's like, yeah, they're wandering around. But then if they find a camp spot, then they have everything that they need all prepared for them.
Yeah. Well, what did everybody think of the draw?
I liked it.
Okay. Let's go through let's go through the likes and just like Evan, what do you got?
I think I mostly liked it. I feel like there might be some issues, but I feel like overall I liked it.
Interesting. I think I'm okay with it. I think Megan's on the top tier. You're in the middle, Evan, and I'm kind of a little bit below you. There are some things that don't quite add up for me in it. Some of which we already talked about. The unreliable narrator is the strategically placed rock.
Yep.
That was one of the moments when that happened. I was just like, oh, come on.
Right. I would have had more respect if the spider got to her first and then
That's what
got
I was
to her
thinking.
later.
I
Yeah.
agree.
That's actually what I was thinking. It's like, oh, she got bit by the spider.
Right. Because that's the thing about Australia, right? There's all kinds of crazy stuff there that can kill you, like venomous spiders and all kinds of jellyfish and sharks. And
Yeah, there's a joke in one of the Crocodile Dundees that like there's a spider that can kill you just by looking at you.
Everything's trying to kill you in Australia.
Yeah. Including the rabbits, which are not indigenous. So
yeah.
Anyway, Evan, let's get the Evan point of view on this.
Sure. I remember liking The Dry. I don't remember loving it. I don't remember specifically what my gripes were with it, but I think that movie, the first one, reminded me a lot of this Australian series that I saw called Black Snow, which was like a similar like investigating a crime that happened a long time ago, like a murder, and reflecting and talking to people about their memories. So I thought it was interesting that this one kind of shifted gears. And I think I found this more engaging because I feel like it was faster paced, at least. Because it just kind of like took off and then was, there's the flashbacks, there's the present day where people are being questioned, and kind of like the quick cutting back and forth between all of the different, him as a kid, the people and their recollections of the trip. And I feel like that was working pretty well for me. I like Eric Bana. I think he is good in this role. Good playing it again in a different kind of way. Like this one, it's tying back to his youth, but in a different way. I liked the kind of like parallel story of the missing mother, and how that kind of the trauma from that event is kind of like echoing through the present and giving him this sense of urgency to try and find Anna Torv. I like that this is a little bit more thoughtful than your average kind of police movie where the investigators, or at least him, I can't say the same for his colleague, he's spending time thinking about like, am I responsible for her disappearing? Did I push her too hard as an informant? Did I ask her things to do things that just were too much? And even later when she turns up dead, he's not happy about it. He doesn't feel good about it. He doesn't feel like he's really winning, and he's like thinking like, what am I even doing with my life? Like I'm prosecuting, or I'm chasing after these financial criminals, but like at the end of the day, like, am I really making the world a better place? And I just think it's an interesting juxtaposition that his colleague is like, oh, it was worth it. It's like, there's a dead person. And she's like, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Care.
Like, wow, what a jerk.
I know.
Yeah, she's pretty terrible.
I would have appreciated if like when he's asking himself, what am I doing with my life? Is this even worth it? He imagined himself somewhere in the outback. Okay, that's the last one I'm going to do.
Oh, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like a lot of the stuff in the, I don't know what they're called, the rainforest, jungle, woods,
It's
the
beautiful, whatever
bush.
it is.
They call it the bush or the brush. I get the terms mixed up when we're talking about like
I don't think that's
Australian
the bush.
wilderness.
I think it's just the woods, but maybe.
Yeah. I think there's some really cool shots in there. Like there's the scene at night where they're in a group and they're shining their flashlights in the kind of haziness. And then like the women like decide to make camp and then the men join them. And then the parts where he's kind of like wandering around trying to find her later in the movie. I thought that all looked really cool and had a really cool vibe to it. But yeah, I think some of the murkiness of the narrative in the unreliable narrators, and I just didn't feel like it kind of all came together effectively. I feel like there were some interesting dynamics between the people, like the character who was battling addiction and her sister trying to protect her, and that whole thing of like, I'm trying to protect her at all costs. She can't go back to prison or get in worse trouble. And that was kind of interesting, but it got kind of lost in the shuffle. I feel like it was just kind of trying to do too much, and toward the end, it really wasn't committing enough to some of its ideas. At least that's kind of, I think, where I come down. So, overall, I liked it. I found the pacing good. I liked Eric Bana, and I liked the cinematography in places, pacing, and just feeling like the writing was lacking toward the end. It didn't all come together for me.
How about you, Megan?
I don't know why you're whispering ASMR style. I'm creeped out. But so as I said, I liked it. I really liked the first one, and I liked the first one a lot more than this one. Like you, Dave, I liked that it was malevolent and bleak. It had a real bleakness to it, which this one does too, especially some of the things you mentioned, Evan. Like by the end, Eric Bana was like, what am I doing with my life? And like,
Yeah.
yay, we solved the mystery, but who cares? Like he cares very much, but it's kind of like, it's so anticlimactic. Like you feel that weight on him, that emotional weight. And so in that way, it's still a very bleak story. But I love Eric Bana in this role. I think he is extremely good. I really like that Hollywood wanted to make him like this blockbuster star, and he's just not that, even though he should be because he's good enough to be. But I like that he's doing more Australian films. I cannot for the life of me. Blueback. He did a film last year about the ocean, and it was lovely, and he's like a sailor and he's so good in it. He's so charming. So anyway, I love him, and I think he's really great in this, and I like that he's very quiet and very thoughtful in this role. Like you see him thinking, you really see and feel him taking in information and observing people, and I really appreciate that about his performance and his character. I also really liked the cinematography tremendously. That was something I loved about the first one. But the first one feels kind of Western-esque just because of the bleakness of the town, because they're dealing with a drought and it's such a quaint town.
Mm-hmm.
And here it very much is wet, as you both have said. There is an early 80s slasher called The Final Terror that is filmed in the Sequoia Park in California. And this, even though this is not in California, it's in Victoria, Australia, it very much reminded me of that, just like the way the trees are shot and the usage of rain and the wet, dank, lush environment. So I really liked that tremendously. The flashbacks were interesting because there were so many flashbacks in the first one too, but these are kind of used in a different way. And I like that. I like that structure. I think the thing for me is that Evan, you said something to the effect like it didn't all come together. And even though I liked this, I agree with you. There's something about it that didn't quite fully come together, and it didn't feel like a real twisty mystery. It didn't feel as gripping as I felt like it should. It all kind of just feels like, oh, yeah, that's what happened. Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's what happened. And I can't quite tell if it's an issue with the writing or an issue with the casting, because I think I love Anna Torv. I think she's great. She's a great actor. But some of the other actors, I'm like, you're okay, but is the issue that it's not a good enough performance, or is an issue that we don't know enough about the characters? And not in the sense of an unreliable narrator, although maybe that's part of it, but I just feel like I needed more. So I still liked it, but it feels like there's something kind of missing. And then I'm like, wait, is that supposed to be the point? Like, I'm not supposed to find this gripping, because there is such a sensationalistic element to murder mysteries, to missing persons movies and TV shows, to true crime. Like, is it kind of making some kind of commentary like we shouldn't find these so riveting and salacious and engaging? I don't know. But yeah, but I didn't find it like a real twisty, gripping mystery. But I still was very much intrigued as to what was going on, and I really enjoyed it, mainly because of Eric Bana. But yeah, but I liked it.
Well, here's why you're both wrong. So,
how dare you?
I did like this, but I also found myself wanting to like it more than I did.
Ooh.
And I think what worked so well for me in the first one is the immediacy of the crime in that one. Is it directly relates to him, and
great point.
And his, like, he was involved with it in some way, and it is revealed that he is an innocent in it. But then you have this one, and I feel like, now I haven't read the novel, but it feels like in this, his flashback scenes of him with his mom and dad in the same area in this forest, getting lost, or his mother being kidnapped. I mean, who knows? And that all feels like shoehorned together in some way. Because I just think that trying to link the, early 80s flashback of his mother's disappearance, her recovery, and ultimately her death — she does die from her wounds. I think it's such a thin line that they're trying to like make thicker. Does that make sense?
It does. It feels too convenient almost.
Yeah. And Evan, you made the point that, like, the convenient rock, there's also the convenient fall off the waterfall. Like when that happened, I was just like, we've gone off the deep end, literally. But the good news is, I guess, that Eric Bana saves Lauren when she falls. He knocks her over and then he saves her. He doesn't mean to knock her over. She slips on a rock.
It's an accident. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. The look on his face when he's like, "Ah, shit," and then the shot from behind when he jumps over the side of the, it's like, I don't know where they shot that. I'm sure it was only like actually a 2-foot drop from where they were at that angle, but it really looks like he was going into the abyss.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think I jokingly referred to that as Chekhov's waterfall during the movie, because she appeared up there and I thought she's going to go take a tumble off that waterfall later, especially when she was up there again. And I think he or someone else said, you're probably not going to survive a fall off this thing. If you fall off into the water, you're not going to like make it out.
I think that was the guy who led them into the, like, on the hike initially, because he's like, oh, the force of the waterfall will push you under so fast.
Even more than in The Fugitive, which I guess technically wasn't a waterfall, but.
And she was like, I didn't mean to kill her. And he was like, I don't care.
I don't care.
Or as he would have said, I don't care. So, no, he wouldn't have said that. I also struggle a little bit with the Now, I don't know, this, Megan, this kind of gets into the territory you were talking about. Are we supposed to find this gripping? Are we supposed to find it less sensationalistic? Eric Bana's detective, and his character does come around to this, makes some really questionable professional decisions in this. Like going to the daughter's school and then running into the forest when he knows there's like a typhoon basically coming down on them. Even more crazy because he's been in there before and he knows what that wilderness is like, so yeah, and just I can't really quite put my finger on it other than, it's like, it's the dude's rug. We need the dude's rug to tie everything together, to tie all the plot threads together. I also had, there were a couple of performances that I was like, these are not good performances. I thought Jill was not good. I thought the spider-bitten sister was not good. She's like, just admit it. Just admit that you did it. I'm not going to do the accent for her. Just, she's accusing her sister of like having bashed Anna over the head, or Anna Torv, Alice over the head. And that just felt false and it went on too long. But what I did like is Eric Bana's couple of exchanges with Jill's husband, the money launderer in question, who's such a self-righteous prick. And Eric Bana basically tells him at the end, listen, if I ever do find hard evidence that you've done these things, you're going to learn, you're going to learn what it's like to basically just be fucked for the rest of your life. You're going to be one of the white collar criminals who actually goes to prison. I can't believe that nobody said Bernie Madoff because everybody knows who he is the world over. But, and I liked that actor's interplay with Eric Bana. Because there was just a smug, self-satisfied creepiness to it. And it's like, man, I know that guy. I have met that guy. Yeah. And I do think Eric Bana is really good in this role. And I do like to see him doing more Australian movies. I think that movie you mentioned, Megan, Blueback, is that what it was called?
Yes.
I think Robert Connolly did that too.
He might have.
So I heard an interview with Eric Bana not too long ago, probably around the time The Dry came out, where he was talking about the movie star thing. And he's like, well, basically, I just want to do the movies I want to do. And if they're big, huge American movies, then that's where it comes down.
Yeah.
And he's like, but, like with a movie like The Dry, it's just a good character, a good detective story. And so I really felt compelled to do it. And clearly he knows where his bread is buttered. So, yeah. And he likes avocado toast. I remember that.
He has good taste. And yes, Robert Connolly did do Blueback.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Which is a nice little movie.
Okay. I feel like I should check it out. So, Australian cinema, when it's good, is like just, there's some such great Australian movies. Last Wave, Walkabout. I don't love Picnic at Hanging Rock like a lot of people do.
I like the production design. It's really beautiful to look at.
It is a beautiful movie. That's true. So anyway, I wouldn't say don't see this because there are so many elements that work, but the not coming together is,
it's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying though, Megan, about like, is that in itself trying to make a point? And it's so tough to tell sometimes whether that was intentional. When the filmmaker is like, oh yeah, I like pulling the rug out from under the audience, or like upending their expectations when it comes to a genre movie like this. Wish I knew.
Yeah. I also did like the tone of this one. It does have a different tone from like the tone of The Dry. I might have said this earlier in the episode, or maybe I said it off mic, is malevolent, in like a quiet malevolence, whereas this one's morose. So this is just, it's beyond melancholy. Everything in this movie is morose. So, just a lot of people like sad about their, this fucking horrible camping trip, and sad about maybe I accidentally killed this person, and sad, am I doing the right thing professionally with my life? And sad that I went to prison because I robbed my sister's house. There's just a whole bunch of shit,
A lot of bitterness, a lot of bitter Bettys around.
Yeah.
It's true.
So there you go. That's where I come down. Looks good. It's a good looking movie though.
Yes.
Also.
Mm-hmm.
But I would 100% see another one of these with her.
Oh, I would too. I would.
I'm
if
not
they were
mad
like,
at these at all.
Yeah, if they were like, hey, we're doing the Dry 3, I'd be like, well, fucking sign me up. Where's my ticket?
Yeah.
I'll be in the center on opening night.
Especially if they shift the tone again. You know, like if they do similar to this, they're like, all right, I'm gonna do something like completely different, but put the character, same character in this, you know, whatever the new setting is, or you know, mystery.
Well, yeah. Australia's what, 20% desert? It's got a shitload. Like it's got mountain ranges. It's got
beaches,
rainforest. Beaches. Yeah, we could do something that somebody
cities.
who like dies because they like their body scraped across the Great Barrier Reef like a million times during a storm, but maybe that person was thrown in.
Maybe you need to write the Dry 3, Dave.
Maybe I'm going to write a mystery called The Mystery of the Mysterious Python. And, it'll just be about this python that's way too big and why. What government conspiracy? Who is shooting it up with testosterone? I don't know. The Dry 3, The Mysterious Python. The dumbest movie anybody has ever thought up on the spot on a podcast.
I don't know. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I might want to see. What is it? The Dry 3,
there were a movie
Python?
called The Mysterious Python.
The Mysterious Python.
Yeah.
Evan, are you looking this up right now?
To see if there's a movie called The
to see if
Mysterious
there's
Python.
a movie. I might be.
There is a third Aaron Falk book. So
there is, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But unlike
So
a lot
who
of
knows?
like your Mickey Hollers and like Bosch's, those books just come out like James Patterson books. They just come out like every year. I think she's only done 3 of these books over like a decade, right? So
yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no other comments about Force of Nature, the Dry 2, let's bring it in for landing.
I am just going to say real quick, there was one moment when they were talking about the serial killer and the serial killer's dog. I was like, do we have a dog serial killer in this movie? Is the dog the serial killer?
I mean,
God.
That would be kind of amazing.
It's the Hound of the Baskervilles, except it's, the wet. Which I stole from Evan. I didn't come up with that. I have to.
No, it seems like we both came up with it individually while we were watching it.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, so I don't know. And when they found the dog's grave, I was like, it is the serial killer's house. So anyway. Can't believe that nobody ever found that in 40 years, though.
Yeah, that is surprising to me.
I mean, it's supposed to be really dense, like so dense that nobody will venture off by themselves, except for Eric Bana. So, because he knows the terrain. So the third novel is The Lost Man, and it is set in southwest Queensland on a large cattle station. So it's not going to be
the desert, but okay.
it's not the python. Nor is it the beach.
That's too bad. I mean, it's not too bad. It's fine.
Crocky.
Crocky, the Dry 3. If any Australian ever listens to this show, they probably want to murder me. So, which is completely against their nature because they're such a friendly people. All right, I'm going to stop. I base everything I know about Australia on The Last Wave and Crocodile Dundee. So,
yikes! That's quite a spectrum.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We'll top it off with the stereotype about Australians drinking Fosters, which we know that they don't.
They do not.
No.
They do not drink Fosters.
Isn't that a gag in Hotel? The movie we saw with the two women they're Americans who work in the hotel, and it turns out to be a crazy misogynist hotel.
Oh,
like
yeah, the Royal
movie,
Hotel.
Right? Yeah. One of them, the friend orders a Foster's at this bar, and the bartender's like, really?
Yeah. Yes.
What-
That is.
okay.
That is in that movie. Such a great movie, by the way.
It is.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for this week's episode. So just to quickly recap, Let It Be is currently on Disney Plus to watch, and I'm going to assume that Dave would recommend it, but I think he gave it a qualified recommend for completists or
Yeah. I mean, it's been unavailable to watch except for old laser discs and VHS tapes since, the late 80s, early 90s.
dust
So,
off your
yeah.
Laserdisc copy.
Mhm.
Okay. And then Evil Does Not Exist. Sounds like a recommend from you, Megan, right?
Yeah, and that opened in theaters in New York and LA on May 3rd, and it just opened in Boston today on May 10th, and it's gonna, I believe, expand to more cities. But yes, I would recommend it. Like I said, it's a slowly unfolding film, but it's an unusual film watch.
Hmm.
So, and it's a ponderous one. So, very curious to hear people's reactions.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds really intriguing. And Force of Nature, The Dry 2, which will be in theaters. It sounds like we're all kind of like recommend, even if it's not the most vigorous recommendation.
Yeah.
I think this is on VOD too. And yes, I would recommend it, especially if you've seen The Dry, which
Yeah.
you should. Whether or not you see this one, the second one, you definitely should see the first one.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
But you don't need to see the first one. That's what's kind of nice.
No, it's not. It's not
stand
essential.
alone. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I needed to clarify.
Suggest that you see the other one because we enjoyed it.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
It's essential to seeing this one.
You nailed it, sir.
Thank you. All right, so that wraps up this week's episode. We want to say a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you for making us sound so great week after week.
Thanks,
Thank
Otto.
you, Otto.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can find us anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also find us over at our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. We are all over social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. And I think that's it for the places you can find us at the moment. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
You can leave us a voicemail, talk to us about any of the movies we've discussed this week, any movies that we did not discuss this week that you want to talk to us about. You can also text that number, by the way. It's kind of funny to think about. Yeah, give us some reactions, ask us questions. Doesn't even have to be about movies. I think I've said a few times we have strong opinions when it comes to food. We're more than happy to share our thoughts about food. And if you like the show, please rate and review us. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, and that will take you to your platform of choice. Helps get the word out about the show, gives us some cred in the podcast world. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. At the top of this episode, I mentioned we talk about the 1979 film The Frisco Kid on this week's exclusive audio. And, for $5 a month, you hear exclusive bonus episodes every week that we put out. And you can vote in monthly polls, and we've got a poll coming up. So, yeah, that's a lot of fun. So, that wraps things up for me. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast. You can find me on social media as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
My name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at OpinionS World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. If you want to find me on social media, on Letterboxd, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, something else. I'm Dave C's. Just Google Dave C's movies. I'm the only person dumb enough to name himself that. So there you go.
Look it up, people.
Yeah, I'm not going to do your fucking work for you. Look it up.
Do it or else.
Oh man. All right, gang. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.